Camila didn't realize the moment the storm truly began. It wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with thunder or wind. It came like a whisper, subtle, sneaking through the quiet cracks of her everyday life. At first, she ignored it. She thought she was just tired. Maybe she needed a vacation. Maybe life was just pressing in a little harder than usual. But slowly, the weariness grew heavy, heavier than she could carry. Her alarm clock went off every morning at 6:15 a.m. And every morning she would stare at the ceiling in the still gray darkness, questioning if she had the strength to face another day. Her husband, Joel, had already started distancing himself, though she hadn't noticed it then. He was home less, distant more, his answers shorter, his gaze elsewhere. Still, she told herself this was just what happened after 10 years of marriage. You get busy, you grow tired, but love stays, doesn't it? Her job was the one place she could breathe. As a communications director at a nonprofit, she managed teams, coordinated events, and wrote messaging that inspired donors and volunteers alike. But even there, the joy had started to fade. The light in her had dimmed. She began to dread the office, dread the constant effort it took to smile. The mask she wore was flawless, but behind it, she was unraveling. It all came crashing down on a Thursday. She got home late after an event debrief meeting, juggling 2 grocery bags and a stack of mail. As she stepped into the apartment, it felt different. Too quiet. Too empty. The couch had an indent, but Joel wasn't there. A suitcase was missing from the closet. She knew before she saw the note. On the kitchen table, written in black ink on a torn piece of paper, it read, "I'm sorry. I'm tired. I can't keep pretending. I don't love you anymore. I don't think I ever really did. I'm leaving." No name, no bouvier, just an ending that read like a death sentence. Camila dropped everything. The eggs cracked. Milk spilled onto the floor. She didn't care. She sat down and stared at the note until the words blurred, until night fell and then rose again. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just went numb. Days turned into weeks. Her church friends reached out. She ignored them. She couldn't face them. Not with the shame, the questions, the feeling that her life had collapsed and God didn't show up. She started whispering to him in the dark. Not prayers, just broken things. "God, where are you? I thought you loved me." Nothing. Not a whisper. Not a sign. Just silence. Then came a job loss. A company-wide restructuring, they called it. But to her, it felt like confirmation. That she was cursed. That she had done something wrong, and now God was punishing her. She stopped eating. Her eyes hollowed. Her body thinned. Her voice faded. The few friends who dared to check in always got the same answer. "I'm fine." But Camila wasn't fine. She was drowning. One evening, a heavy rainstorm swept the city. She sat in her apartment, lights off, wrapped in a blanket, watching lightning split the sky outside her window. Each crack of thunder felt like it came from inside her chest. She whispered again, "Jesus, if you're real, if you still see me, please, please help." Still nothing. She went to sleep, not expecting to wake. But the next morning, something odd happened. As she dragged herself to check the mailbox, there was a single envelope inside. No name, no stump, just her address, scribbled in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a simple note. "You're still loved. He's still coming. Don't give up. No signature. No explanation." Camila looked around, startled. Who? How? She pressed the note to her chest. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep her breathing that day, and the next, and the one after that. The storm didn't end, but shifted, because now she wasn't just drowning in despair. Now there was a thread, thin, fragile, but real, of hope. And hope, even in its smallest form, can fight storms. Camila didn't wake up feeling better, but she woke up, and that, in itself, was a small miracle. The note from a mailbox stayed folded on her nightstand like a lifeline. She read it each morning as if the words might change, as if somehow they could breathe life back into her soul. "You're still loved. He's still coming. Don't give up." That was the only sentence that made her pause anymore. He's still coming. Who? Why? When? There was no return address. No trace of who had written it. But somehow, it felt more divine than anything she'd heard in church in months. Still, the storm didn't lift. Camila had to file for unemployment. Her lease renewal loomed, and her bank account reminded her daily that her life was falling apart faster than she could rebuild it. Her phone remained silent. Even those who once checked in had started pulling away, assuming time would heal her or that she wanted space. But space is dangerous when you're alone with pain. One particularly gray Tuesday, she left her apartment for a walk. The air was cold. The wind scraped at her cheeks. She passed people who looked happy, couples holding hands, mothers laughing with their children, people with purpose. She hated them for it, not because they did anything wrong, but because they had what she lost. Her footsteps took her past an old church. It wasn't her usual one, but she remembered visiting it once in college. On a whim, she pushed open the doors. It was empty, silent, smelled like old wood and dust. She sat at the back pew. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't pray, just breathed. Then, almost involuntarily, she whispered, "I hate you for letting this happen." Her voice echoed louder than she expected in the stillness. No lightning struck, no voice thundered back, but tears welled in her eyes. She didn't wipe them away. "I trusted you. I gave you everything, and you let him walk away. You let me lose everything." Silence. Then footsteps. A janitor appeared, shuffling in with a mop and bucket. He didn't notice her at first, humming softly to himself. But when he did, he smiled. "Didn't mean to interrupt, miss. Just cleaning up." She nodded, wiping her face quickly. "It's okay. I was just leaving." As she stood, he tilted his head. "You all right?" It was such a simple question, but something about his voice made her pause. "I don't know," she said honestly. He looked at her, kind eyes behind weary wrinkles. "You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to know where to turn when you don't." He went back to mopping. Camila left quietly, but his words stuck to her ribs like food for the starving. That night, she opened the Bible she hadn't touched in months. Dust flew. The pages stuck together, but she opened to Psalms. Her fingers landed on chapter 34. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Crushed in spirit. That was her. She didn't pray, but she sat with the verse open on her lap and just let it be true, if only for a moment. Days passed. The weather worsened. Bills piled, and the silence from heaven continued. Then came the call. Her mom, who had always seemed invincible, had a stroke. Camila caught the first bus she could to her hometown. For hours in the cold, with nothing but a backpack and a racing heart. She hadn't been home in years. Too many wounds, too many memories. But when she walked into the hospital room and saw her mother, weak, unable to speak, tubes and monitors all around, something in Camila broke again. Not in despair, in surrender. She grabbed her mother's hand. "Mom, it's me. I'm sorry it's been so long." Tears escaped her mother's eyes. She tried to squeeze Camila's hand. She couldn't speak, but her eyes said it all. Love, relief, forgiveness. Camila stayed all night, sitting in a stiff chair, watching the woman who raised her now vulnerable and fragile. And it hit her, storms didn't just come to destroy. Sometimes they came to reveal what really mattered. She didn't sleep. But before dawn, she whispered, "God, if you're still coming like that note said, I think I might be ready now." When she returned to her apartment days later, exhausted and hollow, another envelope was waiting in her mailbox. Same handwriting, same mystery. She opened it quickly. Storms don't scare him. He walks on waves. He's closer than you think. Camila dropped to her knees, right there on the floor of the lobby. Tears didn't come from grief this time. They came from longing. Because somehow, Jesus was still writing to her in the middle of the rain. Camila woke to the sound of thunder again. It had been days since the last letter, and though the skies were heavy outside her window, the air in her chest felt a little less suffocating. She sat upright, clutching the mysterious note on her nightstand. Storms don't scare him. He walks on waves. He's closer than you think. She traced the handwriting again and again with her fingertip. Who is sending these? An angel? A stranger? Or could it actually be Jesus? She scoffed at her own hope. It sounded ridiculous. And yet, the warmth in her chest refused to fade. Later that morning, she pulled on a hoodie and walked down the street toward the cafe she used to frequent. The place had barely changed. Mismatched chairs, the clinking of mugs, soft indie music humming through the speakers. She ordered a coffee, took the corner seat near the window, and tried to breathe like she used to. Before the storm took everything, she opened her journal. Blank. Her pen hovered. Then words began to spill out. Jesus, if you're really in the storm, then walk into mine. Because I'm still afraid, still angry, still unsure. But I want to believe you haven't forgotten me. She didn't expect anything. But when she looked up, an older woman had taken a seat across from her without asking. Her face was familiar, but Camila couldn't place her. You're hurting, the woman said gently, sipping her tea. I can feel it. Camila blinked. I'm sorry, do I know you? The woman smiled faintly. Not yet, but I know your pain. I lost a daughter. Years ago. Accident. I was angry with God for a long time. Camila's heart clenched. She said nothing, but the woman continued. But one night, after weeks of silence, I felt him speak, not with words, with presence. A peace that came while I was in the kitchen, crying into a dish rag. He reminded me that storms are allowed not to destroy, but to rebuild. Camila swallowed hard. How do you rebuild when everything's broken? You let him build with the pieces, the woman said. And then she stood, just like that. Wait, Camila said. What's your name? The woman paused at the door, looked over her shoulder. Grace. And then she was gone. Camila stared out the window, stunned. A gust of wind pressed against the glass, and for a moment, the clouds parted just enough for sunlight to strike her table. She opened her journal again and wrote just one line. I want to believe you're walking toward me. That night, she dreamed. In the dream, she was standing in the middle of a violent ocean. The waves towered. The sky above was churning black. She was alone, sinking, screaming, but no one came. Then suddenly the storm paused. Not ended, paused. A single figure walked across the surface of the waves toward her. Not running, not panicked, just walking. Calm, intentional. He didn't say a word, but his eyes met hers. And all at once, the water held her up. The wind slowed. The sky lightened. She awoke in tears. And this time she prayed. For real. Jesus, was that you? Were you showing me what's coming? Or what's already happening? The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt full, like someone was listening. Over the next few days, she received 3 more letters, each left in her mailbox, each in the same handwriting. The first said, you don't have to be whole to be held. The second, you're not forgotten. You're being formed. The third, I'm already in the fire. Meet me there. That last line lit something deep inside her. She knew the story. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, thrown into a furnace, but Jesus was in it with them. She had read it as a child, believed it in Sunday school. But now she needed it to be real. That night, she lit a single candle in her living room. She turned off all the lights. She laid the letters out before her like a trail of breadcrumbs back to hope. She knelt on the carpet, and for the first time in months, she said the name out loud. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in need. Jesus. Her voice cracked. Please walk into my storm. Not just near me. Into it. I don't want to do this alone anymore. The room was quiet. The candle flickered. And then something unexplainable happened. Not with her eyes. With her spirit. She felt something move through her chest. Not fear. Not sorrow. Presence. Like someone had just entered the room and wrapped a blanket around her soul. She fell asleep on the floor. Tears dried on her cheeks. Peace covering her like armor. The next morning, she woke early. No dream. No vision. But something inside her had shifted. She turned on worship music for the first time in forever. The lyrics pierced her like medicine. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. She sang quietly, then louder still. Neighbors probably thought she'd lost her mind. She didn't care. Jesus was in the storm, and maybe he had been there the whole time. Camila wasn't sure how to explain what had changed, but something had. She still didn't have a job. Her apartment still echoed with absence. Her bank account was still one bad day from disaster. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Not in the same way. The difference was invisible, but undeniable. Like walking into a familiar room and knowing someone else had been there, rearranged everything, and left peace behind. She began rising earlier. Instead of hiding under the blankets, she reached for her journal. She didn't always know what to write, but she scribbled anyway. Bible verses, raw prayers, even letters to Jesus. They usually started the same way. I don't know what you're doing, but I trust you're doing something. It wasn't blind faith. It was desperate faith. Not certainty, but hope with bruises. And somehow that was enough. Then one day, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She let go to voicemail. After months of silence and shame, answering unknown calls had become a risk she rarely took. But the voice on the message was familiar. Hi, Camila. This is Dina from Restoration House. We met briefly 2 years ago when you spoke at our fundraiser. I know this is sudden, but we're looking for someone to help with community outreach for our women's shelter. It's part-time for now, but it could grow. Would you be interested in coming in to talk? Camila stared at her phone. She remembered Dina, the quiet woman with eyes like compassion and hands that never stopped moving, always wiping down tables, pouring coffee, hugging the broken. She remembered how she had once admired her and wondered if that kind of woman was born brave. Now she was calling her? Camila hesitated, then called back. Restoration House was in the rough part of town. The paint peeled off the bricks. The stairs creaked, but it pulsed with warmth. Camila stepped inside and was immediately met by the smell of cinnamon and something baking. Dina greeted her at the door with a hug. No words, just arms wrapped tight around her as if to say, I see the storm in your eyes, and I'm not afraid of it. They sat in the tiny office filled with old furniture and hope. Dina got straight to the point. We need someone who's been through something, not just someone with credentials. These women don't trust perfect people. They trust scars. Camila's throat tightened. I have scars, she whispered. Dina smiled gently. That's why I called. The work wasn't glamorous. She helped organize meals, coordinated rides to court hearings, listened to sobbing women share stories of abuse, addiction, abandonment. But Camila never flinched, because she knew that pain, not in detail, but in depth. She never said, I understand. She said, I'm still healing too, and they trusted her for it. After a week, she began to notice something odd. Every time she opened the mailbox at Restoration House, she found one of those notes. Handwritten, encouraging, undeniably familiar. He's using your pain as a platform. Don't despise the process. The wilderness is training ground, not punishment. You're no longer just surviving. You're beginning to walk on water. She didn't know who was sending them. Maybe it was someone on the staff. Maybe Dina knew. Maybe not. But Camila didn't ask. She simply smiled, folded them neatly, and kept them in her pocket like promises. One evening, as she was leaving, she saw a woman sitting alone on the sidewalk. Young, dirty clothes, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Shivering, Camila walked over and sat down beside her without a word. The girl didn't look at her. I'm not here to preach, Camila said gently. I just saw you, and I remember what it felt like when I thought nobody did. The girl's lip quivered. Do you believe in God? She asked, voice hoarse. Camila paused. I do, but I also understand what it's like to feel like he walked away. The girl nodded, as if that was the most honest thing she'd ever heard. Then she whispered, what if I'm too far gone? Camila didn't flinch. You're not. How do you know? Camila reached into her coat pocket and handed her the most recent note. The girl read it. Tears ran down her face. You're no longer just surviving. You're beginning to walk on water. Who wrote this? Camila smiled. I don't know, but I think it's someone who knows exactly what kind of storm you're in. The girl wept, and for the first time in years, so did Camila, but this time with joy. Because now, she wasn't just surviving her own storm. She was pulling others out of theirs. That night, she went home and sat on her balcony. The sky was clearer than it had been in weeks. Stars scattered like breadcrumbs of light across the darkness. She whispered, Jesus, I know now. It wasn't the storm you needed to remove. It was me you came to rescue inside it. No answer came, but she didn't need one, because he had already walked in, and she was still standing. Camila had thought the worst was behind her, not because life was perfect, but because peace had finally taken root. The shelter was growing, women were healing, and she was no longer waking up gasping for air in the middle of the night. But storms don't always announce their return. Sometimes they creep in slowly, like clouds reappearing on a clear day. It began with a phone call. "Camila, it's Dr. Ortega from Mercy Hospital. I'm calling about your mother." Camila froze. Her mother had vanished years ago, drifting from city to city, consumed by addiction and shame. They hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. "She's here, unconscious. No ID, but a nurse recognized her from an old intake file. You were listed as emergency contact." Camila drove to the hospital in silence. No tears, no anger, just tension, as if every part of her spirit braced itself. When she walked into the room, she saw a frail figure on the bed. Gray hair, hollow cheeks, breathing tubes. A shell of the woman who once held her close, then pushed her away for years. Camila stood at the edge of the bed. No one else was there, just her, the machines, and the silence. She wanted to feel compassion, or anger, or sadness. Instead, she felt numb. But then, a flicker of memory returned. Her childhood, curled in a blanket, her mother singing softly off-key, rubbing her back during a thunderstorm. Tears came, quiet, trembling tears. She reached out and touched her mother's hand. "I don't know how to forgive you yet, but I think Jesus wants me to try." And in that moment, it was like something invisible lifted. Not the pain, not the history, but the weight. She returned home late that night, exhausted, shaken, questioning everything. And there, tucked into her apartment doorframe, was another letter. No name, just handwriting she hadn't seen in months. "I didn't bring you this far to abandon you now. I'm with you in this storm, too." Her knees gave way. She slid down the door, clutching the letter like it was air. The next few weeks were hard. Her mother woke up, disoriented, angry, regretful, kind, bitter, all within the span of hours. Camila visited anyway. Not every day, but often enough to show she meant it. She didn't try to fix her. She didn't ask for an apology. She just sat. One day, as she was leaving, her mother whispered, "Why are you here?" Camila turned to her and smiled gently. "Because Jesus didn't leave me when I was broken, so I won't leave you now." The shelter had grown, too. A second location opened. More beds, more women, more stories. One night, a woman was brought in straight from the police station, disheveled, eyes wide with terror. She had escaped a violent trafficker, and every inch of her shook with fear. The staff tried to calm her, but she screamed at anyone who got near. Camila didn't speak. She just sat on the floor, about 6 feet away, and waited. Hours passed. Then the woman crawled over slowly and whispered, "Are you going to preach to me?" Camila shook her head. "No." "Then why are you here?" Camila smiled. "Because I used to scream too. And someone stayed." The woman broke down sobbing. Camila held her all night. The letters returned more frequently after that. In mailboxes, in her desk, tucked under her car wiper. Each one a breath from heaven. "You're not just surviving anymore. You're sowing peace. You carry my voice now. Use it gently. The storm didn't define you, but it trained you." She never discovered who wrote them, but by now she was sure. They came from the one who walks on water. Camila began speaking publicly, sharing her story, encouraging others who felt too broken to be used by God. She told them about storms, about silence, about the whisper that came in the darkness. She never claimed to have all the answers. But she told the truth. Jesus didn't always stop the storm. Sometimes he stepped into it. And when he did, everything changed. Years passed. Camila never stopped waking up early. The journal pages were now worn, filled with letters not just to Jesus, but from him. Or at least, that's how she saw them. She had learned to listen in silence, to read between the lines, to wait. Her hair had more silver now, her voice more calm, her soul no longer searching but settled. The storms didn't vanish, but they no longer scared her. One autumn morning, As golden leaves danced outside her office window at the third Restoration House location, she received a letter. Not handwritten, not folded. A typed envelope with government stamps. She opened it slowly. Her mother's name was at the top. Estate closed. No will. No claims. All unclaimed contents defaulted to emergency contact. Camila Ruiz. It was strange how quiet grief can be when you've already said goodbye 1,000 ways. She took a deep breath and walked to the shelter garden. The women were planting tulips, laughing with muddy hands. A teenage girl who had once tried to end her own life was now planning to become a therapist. Camila sat on the bench and let herself feel it. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Jesus, for turning storms into seeds." That night, she dreamed again. The same dream from years ago. She was standing in the middle of a raging sea. Waves crashing, wind howling, her feet barely holding steady. But this time, the sky cracked open with light. Jesus was walking toward her. Not rushed, not panicked, peaceful. And as he reached her, the storm stilled. He took her hand, but instead of pulling her away, he whispered, "Now go. Walk into their storms, the same way I walked into yours." Camila woke up in tears, not of pain, of purpose. She got dressed, picked up her journal, and on the last page, she wrote, "Now I know why you let it rain. Because faith doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in surrender." Then she stepped out the door and walked into a new storm, but this time not afraid. This time as a carrier of peace.